All right, for this explainer, we're cracking open a case file on a tiny criminal that's been outsmarting us for centuries. It's a true master of disguise, and it hides in plain sight, right inside our own bodies. Think about it. This is a foe we've known about for ages. So why, in this era of incredible modern medicine, is it actually getting harder to fight? Well, that's what we're here to investigate. Okay, let's meet our prime suspect. Its name is Neisseria gonorrhoeae. It's what's known as a gram-negative bacterium, which basically means it has a kind of tough outer shell that makes it harder to deal with. And it is, of course, the culprit behind gonorrhea. So what does this perp look like? Here's the suspect profile. Under a microscope, it's got a really distinct look. It's a bean-shaped diplococcus. Now that diplo part is key. It means you almost always find them hanging out in pairs, like tiny little partners in crime. And here we go. This is its signature move. This bacterium is famous for hiding inside our own immune cells. Let that sink in for a second. It uses the very cells that are supposed to be the cops as its personal hideout. See, our body's cleanup crew tries to engulf the bacteria, but for some reason, it can't finish the job. It's a brilliant and honestly a terrifyingly effective survival tactic. So the big question is, how does it actually pull this off? Well, that brings us to our first section, where we're going to investigate its MO. You'll see, this thing is a true master of disguise. Every career criminal has an arsenal, right? Well, this one uses these things called pili. Think of them like tiny grappling hooks to latch onto our cells. Then it's got toxins to cause damage, but its super weapon, its ultimate tool, is something called antigenic variation. This means it can literally change its coat on a molecular level. It's constantly shifting its disguise, so our immune system can never get a solid lock on it. So here's the entire operation broken down into a 4-step heist. First, it attaches, using those little grappling hooks. Then it starts doing damage, releasing toxins. Just as our body's security system, the immune response arrives, it pulls step 3, evade. It switches its disguise and slips away. And for the final move, it survives by diving right inside our own immune cells, turning our defenses into the perfect hideout. So now that we know how the heist works, let's take a look at the aftermath. It's time to examine the crime scene and look for the telltale signs of infection.
The primary crime scene is usually the lower genital tract, but this culprit doesn't always stay put. The infection can start to spread, moving to the upper tract, or even go systemic, which means it gets into the entire body.
And here's where it gets really, really tough, especially for detection. The source material says it all. Infected women may be completely asymptomatic until the infection spreads. That means this culprit can be operating in total stealth mode, leaving absolutely no evidence that it was ever there. And the damage doesn't stop there. There's often a devastating secondary crime scene. The infection can be passed from mother to newborn during birth, and this causes a very severe eye infection. It's a really stark reminder of just how vulnerable even the youngest among us are to this bacterium. So, with a suspect that's this good at hiding, how do investigators even confirm its identity? Well, let's move on to our next section, the diagnostic hunt, where we follow the forensic trail. Investigators have 2 main tools in their kit. First, there's microscopy, which is kind of like getting an eyewitness sketch. It's fast, and it can reveal those telltale pairs of bacteria hiding out in our cells. But for the definitive proof, the slam-dunk evidence, you need the DNA. And that means growing a culture. It's a lot slower, sure, but it confirms the suspect's identity beyond a shadow of a doubt. So what's the unique fingerprint that clinches the case? It actually comes down to its diet. N. gonorrhoeae produces acid when it feeds on glucose, and only glucose. This really specific metabolic signature is what separates it from its close relatives, like the one that causes meningitis. It's the one forensic clue that locks in the ID. Okay, but what about cold cases? Chronic infections that have been going on for a while. For those, investigators turn to serology. Now, instead of looking for the bacteria itself, they look for the evidence it left behind, the specific antibodies our body created to fight it. It's basically like finding the culprit's fingerprints long after the crime was committed. So we can identify it, we can find it, but can we stop it? Let's get to our final section, and honestly, this is the most urgent part of this whole case file. This is where we see the culprit fight back. This timeline is pretty alarming. In the past, penicillin was our go-to weapon, But the more we used it, the more this thing adapted. Today, it has developed resistance through all sorts of genetic tricks. It can change its own DNA. It can even swap defensive genes with other bacteria. It's learning to fight back faster than we can invent new ways to stop it. Now, here's where we find a really unusual tool in the medical kit. There is a vaccine for this, but with a major twist. It's not used for prevention. It's actually used as a treatment for those chronic cases to help rally the immune system alongside antibiotics. It's the complete opposite of how we usually think of a vaccine. So, what about a true preventative vaccine? The one that could stop this infection before it even starts? Well, the research on that front has a pretty grim and definitive verdict. Attempts to create one have proven, and this is a direct quote, absolutely unsuccessful. That's a sobering reality for sure. So, what this case file really reveals is a pretty troubling truth. We are up against a microscopic criminal that is constantly evolving, changing its disguise, and learning how to fight back. This is not a solved case. It is an ongoing arms race. And that leaves us with one really urgent question. Are our defenses evolving fast enough to keep up?